My name is Martha. I'm 72 years old, and I live in a quiet, paid-off bungalow in a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. My husband, Robert, God rest his soul, passed away 4 years ago. On paper, I'm just what I look like, a retired widow living on a fixed income. What my son, Mark, and his wife, Susan, don't know is that behind this facade of a simple old woman, I'm a senior retained consultant for my old engineering firm. It's a high-stress advisory role I do from my home office. My retirement brings in about $130,000 a year, not counting the dividends from the portfolio Robert and I built. Mark and Susan have never had a clue. Robert and I, we were a team. We met at a college dance in 1973. I was studying to be a civil engineer and he was in accounting. He had this laugh that could fill a room and a pragmatic streak a mile wide. "Martha," he'd say, "we're going to work hard, save smart, and live simple. I don't want money to be the thing our family fights over." We got married right after graduation. For 45 years we lived by that code. We bought this house, drove our cars for 10 years, and poured our money into investments, not luxuries. We raised Mark in this very house, teaching him the same values. Or so I thought. The man Mark grew into is different. He and his wife Susan are obsessed with appearances. They live in a massive new build in Solon, drive matching luxury SUVs, and are constantly upgrading. They see my simple life not as a choice but as a failure. After Robert died, their concern became suffocating. They insisted on helping me manage my finances, which was their code for wanting to see my bank statements. I let them. I gave Mark power of attorney for my small local checking account, the one I use for groceries and utilities. I transfer exactly $2,800 a month into it from my real accounts. To them, that $2,800 is my entire world. "Mom, you really shouldn't be eating out," Susan would say, looking at a $15 charge from the local diner. "You need to watch your pennies." "We saw you bought new tires for the Buick," Mark would add, his tone dripping with disappointment. "That's a $600 expense, Mom. That's a huge chunk of your Social Security. You really should have called us first. We could have found you a used set." I just nod. "You're right, son. My mistake. I didn't tell them the Buick was my decoy car, and that the real money paid for their son, my grandson Kevin's, college applications and his new laptop. I just wired it straight to Kevin's account. When Mark found out, he actually took credit for it. 'Glad to see you're using the family support. We gave you wisely, Kevin,' he'd say at Thanksgiving. I let it slide. I endured the patronizing tone, the weekly budget checks. The way they'd speak to me slowly, as if my age had eroded my mind. What hurt wasn't the assumption that I was poor. It was their assumption that I was stupid. Robert's memory was the only thing that kept me from lashing out. Don't let money ruin the family, Martha. So I played the part. I was the doddering old woman, a mild financial burden, grateful for their scraps of attention. I remember one Christmas Susan gave me a gift. It was a financial planning workbook for people on low incomes. "We thought this would be helpful, Martha," she said, her smile as plastic as the poinsettia on her dashboard. "It has lots of tips on using coupons and finding senior discounts." "Thank you, Susan," I said, holding the book. "That's very thoughtful." Later that night, I went into my home office, logged into my brokerage account, and made a $50,000 donation to the Cleveland Clinic's cardiac research wing in Robert's name. The indifference grew. They stopped calling to chat. The only time my phone rang was when my monthly allowance was running low. "Mom, you're down to $200 and there's still a week left. What are you buying?" Mark would ask, his voice tight with frustration. I was buying groceries, but I was also buying time. Time to see if the son I raised was still in there, buried under all that entitlement. I felt like a stranger in my own life. I'd sit in Robert's armchair, looking at the photos on the mantel. Us at Niagara Falls. Mark's high school graduation. Kevin's first birthday. This house was a fortress of memories. This was the home Robert and I built, the one he took his last breath in. And I was starting to feel a chill. A deep, penetrating cold that had nothing to do with the Ohio winter. It was the chill of loneliness. One evening, Mark and Susan came over unannounced. They didn't knock. They used the key I'd given them for emergencies. I was in the kitchen making tea. "Mom, we need to talk," Mark said, tossing his keys onto the counter. right on top of the mail. He didn't even say hello. Susan was already scanning the room, her nose wrinkled. This place still smells musty. We keep telling you, you need to let us hire a cleaner. I like the smell, I said quietly. It smells like home. Whatever, Mark snapped. Look, we've been running the numbers. The property taxes on this place are insane. You're sitting on a dead asset. We think you should sell. I stared at him. Sell the house? Mark, this is my home. It's too much for you, Susan chimed in, walking over to Robert's antique barometer. Think of the upkeep. All this dusting. We found a wonderful place, Mom, Mark continued, pulling out his phone. It's a senior living community. Very efficient. One room, all your meals included. And the best part is, if we sell the house, we can use the equity to pay your fees for years. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing. I looked at the picture on his phone. It wasn't a senior living community. It was a nursing home. Gray walls, fluorescent lights, a shared bathroom. I'm not leaving, Mark, I said, my voice harder than I intended. Don't be difficult, Mom, Mark sighed, putting his phone away. We're trying to help you. You're getting older. You're not making good decisions. Like those tires. He was still talking, but I had stopped listening. I saw for the first time not a concerned son but a vulture. He wasn't worried about my well-being. He was worried about his inheritance. He was worried I'd spend his money before I died. I'll think about it, I lied. You do that, Mark said. Just know we're doing this because we love you. I turned away, hiding the disgust on my face. That was the first time I felt a crack in my heart that had nothing to do with Robert's passing. It was a fresh wound and it was bleeding. After they left, there was a strange silence in the house. The bond one thought I had with my only son, the one I'd held in my arms in this very living room, felt like it was turning to ash. I was a strong woman. I'd designed bridges that spanned rivers. I'd managed $100 million projects. But I was being worn thin by the condescension of my own child. I didn't tell anyone. I had no one to tell. My friends from the firm were scattered across the country. My family was Mark. I started having trouble sleeping. My chest felt tight. I chalked it up to stress. But one Tuesday morning, I was on a video call with my team, going over a structural analysis for a new bridge in Texas. I felt a sudden crushing weight in my chest, like an elephant was sitting on me. Pain shot down my left arm and I couldn't catch my breath. I don't remember much after that. Only the bright white lights of the office fading to black. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital bed at the Cleveland Clinic. The cardiac wing. The same one I donated to. And 4 was in my arm. And a doctor with kind eyes was looking at my chart. Mrs. Albright, you gave us quite a scare, she said. You had a significant heart attack. A widowmaker, as they call it. You're very lucky you were on a video call. Your colleagues called 911 just in time. She said I'd need a triple bypass. I'd be in the hospital for at least a week, followed by months of rehab. The ground beneath me felt like it was slipping away. I wasn't afraid of the surgery. I was afraid of facing it alone. That night I called Mark. I told him what happened. Oh my God, Mom, he said. But his voice wasn't right. It wasn't concern. It was something else. Annoyance? Don't worry, Susan's voice crackled on the speakerphone. We'll handle everything. I thought she meant they would visit. That they would bring me a robe or a book. I was wrong. For 2 days I fought alone. The surgery was brutal. I woke up in the ICU, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck, tubes coming out of everywhere. A nurse, a kind woman named Brenda, was adjusting my monitors. Your family's not here, she asked gently. They're busy, I whispered, the breathing tube having just been removed. On the 3rd day, Mark and Susan showed up. I thought I was dreaming. They stood at the door of my private room, not in scrubs but in their street clothes. Susan was holding a large empty duffel bag. Mom, Mark said, his hands in his pockets. His eyes were cold. Mark. Susan. You're here. I rasped, my throat raw. We need your keys, Mom, Mark said. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask about the surgery. My keys. The house keys. And the car keys, Susan added, stepping forward. We're going to get some of your things for you. Oh, I said, a wave of relief washing over me. I was so weak. Thank you. They're in the little drawer. In the nightstand. Susan walked over, opened the drawer and fished them out. She dropped them into the duffel bag with a metallic jingle. We'll be back, Mark said. He didn't make eye contact. He just turned and walked out. They didn't come back. Not that day. Not the next. For 3 more days I recovered alone. The nurses were my only company. She's a tough one, Brenda would tell the other staff. I pushed myself. I sat in the chair. I took my first agonizing steps down the hallway, clutching a walker. I was fighting not just for myself but because I knew I had to get home. I had to get back to Robert's house. On the day of my discharge, a week after my surgery, I was sitting in a wheelchair by the door, dressed in the same clothes I'd collapsed in. A young social worker I'd never seen before came in, holding a clipboard. Okay, Mrs. Albright, she said brightly. The transport to the facility is here. I frowned. Transport? Facility? I'm going home. My son is picking me up. The social worker's smile faltered. She looked down at her clipboard. Oh dear. It says here your son, Mark, signed your discharge papers 2 days ago. You're being transferred to the Golden Oak Assisted Living Facility. It says here your home was deemed unsafe for your recovery. My blood ran cold. Colder than the ice chips I'd been chewing. There's a mistake, I said, my voice shaking. Golden Oak? I've never heard of it. Get me my son on the phone. He's not answering, she said, looking at her own phone. He left this number for the facility. No, I said, my heart pounding against its new stitches. No. The transport orderlies were kind but firm. I was too weak to fight. I was wheeled out of one of the best hospitals in the world and loaded into a non-emergency ambulance van. We drove not toward my quiet bungalow, but deep into a part of the city I didn't recognize. We pulled up to Golden Oak. It was not assisted living. It was a nursing home and not a good one. The paint was peeling. The air inside smelled of stale urine and disinfectant. I was wheeled into a cramped, dim room with 2 beds. One was empty. The other was occupied by a woman staring blankly at a TV blaring a game show. This is your new home, Mrs. Albright, the administrator said, not looking at me. I was left there in my wheelchair in a room that smelled like despair. I wasn't just abandoned. I was discarded. I sat there for hours. The sun went down. The woman in the other bed started to moan. I had no phone. I had no wallet. I had nothing. They had taken everything. In that moment, something inside me shattered. Not my heart, it was already broken. It was the naive, trusting part of me. The part that believed in the goodness of my own son. Mark and Susan hadn't just moved me. They had taken my keys. They had access to my house. The house I just told them I would never sell. I hid my face in my hands, but I didn't cry. Instead, a cold, hard smile spread across my face. A smile that hurt my sutures. I whispered to the empty room. You just woke up the real me, Mark. And soon, you'll realize you made the biggest mistake of your life. I looked at the phone on the wall between the beds. A payphone. It was for outgoing calls if you had a calling card or a quarter. I didn't. But I remembered the number on the wall. The main desk. I wheeled myself over to the door and waited. It took an hour for an orderly to walk by. Excuse me, I said, my voice stronger now, laced with an authority that had been dormant for years. I am a patient from the Cleveland Clinic. I am here against my will. I need to make one phone call to my attorney. If you deny me that right, I will personally see to it that this facility is sued for unlawful imprisonment by 9 a.m. tomorrow. The orderly, a young kid, froze. He really looked at me for the first time. He didn't see a frail old woman. He saw a threat. Yes, ma'am. Right away. He brought me the phone from the nurse's station. I dialed a number I knew by heart. The 24-hour line for the senior partner of the most powerful law firm in Ohio. My lawyer and the executor of my real estate. David? It's Martha Albright. Yes, Martha. I'm in a place called Golden Oak. It's a long story. No, I'm not okay. They did it, David. They put me in a home. I listened for a moment. David's voice was sharp, cutting through my fog of despair. Yes, I said, my voice dropping. It's time. Activate the Robert Protocol. 3 days after that cold night in the nursing home, David came to see me. I wasn't at Golden Oak anymore. David had discharged me against medical advice, which he could do as my real power of attorney, and had me transferred. Not to a home, but to the penthouse suite of the Ritz-Carlton downtown, with a 24-hour private nurse and a cardiologist on call. David walked in not with flowers but with a thick leather briefcase. He was a man in his 50s, sharp as a tack, and had been my and Robert's lawyer for 20 years. He was the only one who knew about the Robert Protocol, a set of instructions I'd laid out in the event that Mark's greed ever fully eclipsed his humanity. "Are you sure you want to go through with this, Martha?" David asked, setting the briefcase on the mahogany table. "This is total." I looked out the window at the Cleveland skyline. I designed 2 of the buildings I was looking at. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "And I want everything to start tomorrow." David nodded, a grim smile on his face. He already made the first move. The house. He sold it. What? I turned from the window. He used the power of attorney, the one you gave him for the checking account. It included a clause about managing your property and assets in the event of your incapacitation. He found a cash buyer, a house flipper, and sold it for 50 cents on the dollar. Closed in 48 hours while you were in surgery. The money, $140,000, is sitting in his bank account. He had sold Robert's house, our house, for pocket change. "The first thing we do," David said, "is freeze that account." I filed the emergency injunction this morning, citing POA fraud and elder abuse. By the time he wakes up, his ATM card won't work. I nodded. "Good. What's next?" "The IRS," David said. "That $140,000 is an untaxed, fraudulent transaction. We're filing a whistleblower report. They love cases like this." And then he opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. "We filed the civil suit. We're suing for the full market value of the house, plus damages, plus the return of these." He handed me a piece of paper. It was a printout from an appraisal website. "A week after Robert's funeral," David said softly, "Mark and Susan had his watch collection appraised. The Omega you gave him. The Rolex. They told you they were lost in the move when you asked." My hands were shaking. Not from weakness. From rage. "And finally," David said, "the reveal." The next morning, Mark and Susan were summoned to David's office. They thought they were coming to discuss the management of my assets. They probably thought they were getting more money. I was there, waiting in the main conference room. Not in a hospital gown. I was wearing a custom-tailored St. John suit David had acquired. For me. My private nurse had me looking sharp. When they walked in, their jaws dropped. Susan's face went white. Mark just stared. "Mom," he stammered. What is this?" "You're supposed to be at Golden Oak." "I was," I said, my voice a low growl. "But I'm afraid the accommodations were lacking." "David." David stood up. "Mr. and Mrs. Scott, please sit down. We have a lot to discuss. Namely, the freeze on your assets, the pending IRS investigation, and the civil and criminal charges being filed against you for financial elder abuse, fraud, and theft." Susan actually fainted. She just crumpled to the floor. Mark didn't even look at her. "What are you talking about?" Mark yelled. "Charges. We were helping her. She's senile. She can't manage." "Senile," I said, standing up slowly, my heart stitches pulling. "Does this look senile?" David slid a file across the table. "These are Mrs. Albright's tax returns for the last 3 years. As you can see, her fixed income is a $130,000 a year consulting retainer. This," he slid another thicker file, "is her investment portfolio, currently valued at just over $8.4 million. The account you had access to, Mark, was a decoy. A test. And you failed." Mark's face was a mask of disbelief, confusion, and then raw, naked greed. His eyes darted from me to the portfolio. $8 million, he whispered. "The house you sold for $140,000? Its market value was $450,000, David continued. You defrauded your mother. You stole from her. And you did it while she was recovering from open-heart surgery. But, Mom. Mark looked at me, his eyes pleading. You were poor. No, Mark, I said, walking toward him. I was quiet. Your father and I. We wanted you to have a normal life. We wanted you to learn the value of work, not the value of an inheritance. We didn't want our money to create what's standing in front of me right now. I paused right in front of him. You sold his house. You sold his house. I. Get out, I said. David will be in touch with your lawyer. Assuming you can afford one. Mark just stood there, stunned. The air in the room was thick with the sound of a life imploding. I turned and walked away, leaving him there with the numbers and a brutal reality crashing down on him. In my heart there was no joy, just a profound aching clarity. Mark had lived his whole life in the shadow of a wealth he never knew existed, and in one desperate, greedy act, he had ensured he would never see a single penny of it. Just 3 days after that meeting, my phone rang. I was back in the Ritz, sitting on the balcony watching the sunset. It was an unknown number. I let it ring. A voicemail popped up. It was Mark. Mom, please pick up. Please, I'm at the house. My heart skipped. He was at my house? The locks are changed, Mom. There's a sign on the door. A notice of seizure from your lawyer. Mom, they froze everything. The checking account. Susan's savings. The kids' college fund. We can't buy groceries. The mortgage payment for our house bounced. They're going to foreclose. His voice was shaky, raw, like he'd been running. I just sat there, listening to the recording, swirling the water in my glass. I was wrong, Mom. I was so wrong. I was stupid. I thought you were. I don't know what I thought. I saw the money from the house and I thought, we could finally get ahead. Susan pressured me. It was her idea. The nursing home, the watches. All of it. I leaned back and closed my eyes. Not because I was moved, but because I wanted to hear every desperate word. The betrayal was so complete. He was even willing to throw his own wife under the bus to save himself. Mom, I'm begging you. You're my mother. You have to help us. Please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He was sobbing now. A full-blown hysterical cry. I opened my eyes. The sun was gone. The city lights were twinkling like jewels. Calm and cold, I spoke to the empty room. You're right, Mark. I am your mother. And as your mother, I am responsible for teaching you one final lesson. Actions have consequences. I picked up my phone, but I didn't call him back. I called David. David, I said. He's blaming Susan. David chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Is he? That's rich. Don't worry, Martha. I've already sent the second file to Susan's new lawyer. Her new lawyer? Oh yes. She filed for an emergency divorce petition this morning, citing irreparable financial and emotional distress caused by Mark. She's claiming she was the victim, that he's the one who's abusive and financially reckless. She's trying to cut a deal. I just laughed. I couldn't help it. It was a hollow, rusty sound, but it was a laugh. The rats were eating each other. David, I said, don't let either of them have a dime. But I want you to set up a new trust. A blind trust. For who? For Kevin. My grandson. He's a good kid. He's at Ohio State. I want his tuition paid. His living expenses. Everything. But he is to never know where it comes from. Not until I'm gone. And not a penny is to go through his parents. Consider it done, Martha. I hung up. I deleted Mark's voicemail. Then I blocked his number. Rumors of Mark's downfall spread like wildfire in the affluent suburbs of Solon. The bank seized their matching SUVs. The foreclosure notice on their McMansion was public record. David's lawsuit, citing elder abuse and fraud, was a devastating blow to Mark's reputation as a financial manager, which is what he called himself. He lost his job. No one would hire a man who was publicly accused of robbing his own mother, especially after his mother had a heart attack. Susan's attempt to play the victim failed. David produced the appraisal sheet ordered for Robert's watches, time-stamped 2 days after the funeral. He produced text messages between her and Mark, discussing which nursing home was cheapest and farthest away. Her divorce petition was thrown out, and she was named as a co-conspirator in the lawsuit. They lost everything. The house, the cars, their country club membership. The last I heard, they were renting a small 2-bedroom apartment in a rundown complex in Parma. Mark was working a night shift at a 24-hour gas station, and Susan was a cashier at a discount grocery store. As for Robert's watches, I got them back. David's team, working with the police, found the pawn shop receipts. It cost me a small fortune to buy them all back from the collectors they had been sold to, but I did. They're now sitting in a bank vault, waiting for the day I can give them to Kevin. And as for me, my final cardiac checkup was on a crisp autumn morning, 6 months after the surgery. The doctor, the same one with the kind eyes, looked at my chart and smiled. "Martha, your heart is stronger than women half your age. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." I just smiled and squeezed her hand. It was the moment I felt reborn. I went back to work. But not full-time. I stepped down from my consultant role and took a position on the board. I didn't need the money, but I needed the purpose. I sold the bungalow. The new owners were a young couple, just starting out, an engineer and an accountant. Felt right. I didn't buy a new flashy condo. Instead, I bought a small house on Lake Erie. It's quiet. I can watch the boats in the morning and listen to the water at night. It's not grand, not as big as the old house, but it's my space. Peaceful. Whole. One weekend afternoon, David stopped by. We sat on the back deck, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of orange and purple. "Have you thought about, reconciling?" he asked, half teasing. I looked at him and smiled softly. "I've received 2 letters. Both from Mark. Both asking for money. Not for forgiveness." I took a sip of my iced tea. "Robert," I said quietly. "He always wanted to protect our family from our money. He never imagined he needed to protect me from our family." David nodded, saying nothing more. The breeze carried the scent of the lake and the faint sound of a distant bell. In that moment, I knew I hadn't just overcome Mark or the surgery. I had overcome the fear that had kept me silent for so long.